the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to show 19 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things modern workplace within Microsoft 365. My name's Kevin McDonough. I'm a solutions architect at CPS, and I am the Grey of Grey Hat Beard.
And I am the Hat, Alan Erdley.
P.
Also a solution architect at CPS and MVP.
And
so for those not watching on video, Al has a lovely new hat that if he leans forward we can see the nice point to, and is a green hat that makes him look like a P. And I'm afraid talking MVP just finally pushed me over the edge there. Sorry, Gary, over to you. It's a good start.
That's all right. So I'm Gary Trinder. I'm a solutions architect at CPS. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and member of the PMP team. I'm also the beard of Grey Hat Beard.
And we're recording in the evening for once, so it's actually Thursday evening rather than the usual Saturday morning where we've had a good night's sleep on the Friday, a bit of time to recover. Instead, we've all had pretty busy weeks and we're a bit manic with Ignite last week, still trying to catch up on things from that. So if we get a little bit silly, I do apologise. We were going to do a bonus show on the Ignite, but instead we think we're going to throw it all in this one. And usually we try and do a two-parter, but I think we're just going to keep on going through and put it into one long big podcast. So apologies. We'll try and give you little breaks and pauses so you can go and get a cup of tea, or you can carry on listening while you're getting a cup of tea.
That's what the pause button's for.
Exactly. Or just get some headphones, or just blast it out as I do to the kids, and I get, "Daddy, are you listening to yourself talk again?" Yes, I need to make sure it's okay. Anyway, so last week was Ignite. It was another virtual conference. I'm going to put a stake in the ground here. We're going to try not to talk about too much about it being a virtual conference and all the kind of benefits and downsides to that. I know certainly I was trying to do it while working, so was on the first day, watched quite a bit, watched the keynotes, what the intros there. Didn't get to join any other ones, which was any of the table talks, any bits like that. I think Al, Gary, you were both the same, weren't you?
Absolutely. Watched the keynotes, made a point of booking those out, but the rest of it, unfortunately, the day job got in the way.
Yeah, I completely missed it. I must admit, I missed every single bit apart from seeing Twitter and seeing the announcements being repeated over and over again on my timeline. So it was almost like I've seen it once, I've seen it 5 times. I'm definitely going to remember that. And then just covered it afterwards. Just let it go. It's just too much to take in sometimes.
And it's big conferences. Both of you had a little bit of early access to it from your MVP matches as well. So we've seen plenty on there. Don't you worry.
Yes.
I think for those of you who haven't seen it, and I'm sure if you've been on Twitter or anywhere else, you would have heard about the Microsoft Ignite 2020 Book of News, which is the big summary. And on there, for those watching alongside, it's got all the areas of what's been announced. And my screen has now hung, so I can't scroll and show too much more of that. Oh, there we go. It's come back to life. So it was, it goes straight in with some of the Azure AI and some of the details there. It's got links to the more detailed posts. So if you're looking for somewhere to go and find where all the links are, great place, and we'll have that in the show notes. But we're going to cover things a bit differently. And I think really where things, for me, if one word was going to come out from it, it would be Teams. So much that was announced came through from Teams on there.
Shock horror.
I'm amazed. I'm truly amazed that Teams was front and center for pretty much everything. I'm not really amazed at all. I think it's Teams at this juncture in terms of where we are with everything. Teams is obviously going to be front and center because everybody's using it. I think it was amazing considering how much they've had to scale it up, but there's still so much stuff that they're doing with it as well. So much that's going into it, just making it more and more of a focus. Everything seems to be converging on Teams, which is
but I think the announcements, even where they were about other things, were about Teams, such as I think Al, you obviously saw the Oakdale stuff with Power Apps in Teams.
I mean, I've been waiting for that for ages. It's been months and months that we've been waiting for that, and I think we always knew that Power Apps was going to come into Teams, and it's been Yeah, it's been a long time coming. It wasn't a surprise, but it's great to have it actually finally landed and to be able to actually see, for those of you who aren't aware, what Project Oakdale, they're now not really calling it that. They're not calling it Dataflex. They're just calling it Teams and Power Apps, which is a little confusing because it is a different flavor of the common data service. It's a smaller, less feature-rich version of the common data service, but it does mean that you get essentially relational data for storing your content in a Canvas app based on the context of building something in Teams. And it comes with the license that you already have, which is important. You don't have to pay for that additional license for common data service, which I think is a very...
For Power Apps.
For Power App, for common data service and model-driven.
If you happen to be bot obsessed and you want to use Power Virtual Agents, it appears to me at the moment that you do still need a license for that.
Yeah, that will be an interesting one to work through. I think it will open up so many more opportunities for people to actually use the relational data rather than using SharePoint lists and trying to. I mean, it's been a bugbear of mine for 10 years since I got into SharePoint to see lists being used as relational data. This is a solution.
Oh, I love the lookups.
I've been really interested in this because Oakdale obviously was mentioned quite a while, and I'd not been able to actually get my hands on it and have a look. And I actually realised on my dev tenant I could just go to the targeted release. It appeared, it was there, it was available. I was like, great, I'll take a look. So I've actually delved in a little bit more now rather than just we've got CDS. And it's interesting that in Oakdale they're not entities, they're tables. There is a difference between the two. The other thing, there's no API to access any of that data in the that's held in these tables. You have to use the Power App to get data in. The only option you've got is Flow. So it's interesting as well in terms of coming from a developer side. If people are starting to think, oh, I don't have to use SharePoint lists anymore for my SharePoint framework web parts, and I can go into Oakdale, that's not a possibility because there is no exposed API. So that was a little bit of annoyance myself, but then you do get an API with CDS, you see. So it's
that's the dev speaking. See, my immediate response to that would be, why would you use SharePoint framework where you can stick a Canvas app on front of it?
Depends on what you want to do.
I guess that is the point though. It is really targeted. There are constraints. It doesn't have all of the rich data types that CDS has. So making a choice to use it, my advice at the moment would be do a proof of concept first. Make sure it will actually do what you need it to do, because you will run into those sorts of constraints.
And I think that proof of concept, that is where this sits. Prototypes, proof of concepts, small areas where you want to do something there, which you just can't quite justify the CDS for, you can get going on there. The second you have quite a few of these running and they become important, you have, well, I don't think we know what the route through to CDS is, but you have that steps going through and putting on there. Gary's showing off his use of Teams and putting his hand up. You can tell you've been in workshops and being well behaved on the etiquette. So,
there you go.
Gary.
Yeah, so on that very point, Microsoft have done this actually very well. So when you get Oakdale, you don't just have a blank canvas. They've actually provided sample apps out of the box. So there's one of them is an inspection app. And what I really liked about that was it wasn't just an app. So I think we're very much used to, you can create a tab and you can put a Power App in it, and that's it. But with Oakdale, it's a lot more integrated. So these sample apps don't just create one tab, they'll create multiple tabs, but they know the context of the channel that they're working in as well. So you get different behavior, which for me, that really does kind of, make a much better experience of, you can have one app, but dependent on which angle you go to that app in different channels, the behavior can change. And I found that was really good. And the apps that they've built as well are of really good quality. They're not just little samples. They're done really well. So that was really good to see.
And I guess that is a key thing though. These are the context is Teams. So they are context aware. They are aware of what team they're in. They're aware of what channel they're being presented. You don't get that with a standard Canvas app. I think the other thing about it that will be very interesting to see will be
the thing I liked most about the Power Apps. Sorry, this is my machine running slowly.
Okay, so I was going to say
the most interesting thing about I thought coming out with this was that this is one of the few things that was released during Ignite, so you could go and play. So I created a Grey Hat Bead show notes app straight away into our tenant. So I like things you can go to a conference and play with straight away. More of that, please. Sorry, Al.
I was going to say that the one thing about this that to be aware of, certainly from a governance perspective, is going to be how it creates an environment, how many environments get created every time you provision a new, I don't know really what to call it. It's not CDS, it's not Power App, it's a new Teams and Power App instance.
It doesn't create an environment, does it? Or
it does.
I mean, it does create an environment.
Yeah. I noticed that. I thought, from a like DLP potentially, because that's based on environments, that could be a.
There's an awful lot of.
Will be the important thing here.
There's an awful lot of implications. So make sure you check out the Centre of Excellence.
So before people target us as being obsessed with Power Apps, which obviously Al is, but Gary and I aren't quite so. So Al, is there anything else in Teams that you saw?
I think the other big one that I think was really, really interesting was Power BI coming into Teams and being, I don't know what to call them now, first-party Teams apps. You know, you can actually get all of your Power BI interface in there, which I think is really important.
I missed this because obviously you've been able to put a Power BI tab in there. Yeah. What's changed? What is the new first citizen part of it?
Rather than having to go to the Power Apps portal, the web-based Power Apps portal, you can browse all your dashboards and your apps within a Power BI app within Teams. So you can put it on the left-hand rail and actually just get to your content directly, rather than having to publish it within a tab within a channel.
So it's about browsing between other ones, not a specific one with it. It's nice. Yeah,
it's about removing the need to leave Teams. You know, it really is. You know, it's bringing more into Teams the same way they've done with still doing with To Do. You know, it's bringing more in, so you just don't have to leave it. It'll become a desktop. Yeah, but they've combined it with the premium licensing as well, so you can now apply premium Power BI licenses per user.
So this confused, because I always get confused between Pro and Premium. So Pro is I know, Gary, this has been a favorite topic of yours at the moment, but Pro is the one where you can that's where you can share reports and dashboards on there. What's Premium?
I was just about to say that's what everyone thinks. The reality is, if you want to do anything in Power BI really within an organization, you need at least Pro, whether you're creating or consuming a report, unless you already have Power BI Premium, which enables your user base to have the Pro license. Therefore, you don't have to license each individual to consume a report, but you need Pro to still create and share it. This license means that instead of having to license your whole organization for premium capacity, which is about £4,000 a month at what it starts at, you can get those premium features for a subset of people. So it's kind of like the Pro license plus. But it's interesting by looking at the premium features that premium means you're able to embed reports as well anywhere. So it'd be interesting to see what is actually included in that user premium license as well. I don't think it's going to be everything, but so the premium basically gives you dedicated capacity to run your Power BI reports, do extra scheduled.
So when I think Pro first came out, you could have somewhere the Pro license could share that, and then anyone could read it. And Microsoft took that away. This premium license, you think now could do that. So if you had a premium, you could share to people without a premium or Pro?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you still need the pro license. It's a bit of a licensing nightmare, and I've been through it for the last few days. But yeah, it still means the only way to share a report with someone who doesn't have a license is either you have the premium capacity in your organization, or they have or you're sharing it publicly. That's the only way for them not to be licensed. But if you've got premium, they're licensed by the fact of being in that organization. To throw in another caveat, unless you've got E5 licenses, because E5 comes with a Power BI Pro license.
Yeah. Effectively, you've got a pro license at that point.
Yes.
It's a confusing licensing situation. But I think it brings easier use of some of the licenses, because premium isn't just organization level. It gives a bit more flexibility for departments to go premium, as opposed to organizations having to be fully premium. So yeah, I think for me that was another one that jumped out in terms of another consolidation of new features into Teams.
And Al, you've been doing some great talks at various user groups and conferences on to do and helping with your mental health. Quite a lot about mental health, and I think especially Microsoft acknowledging everyone being locked up at home and changing the ways they work. There seems to be a lot to come from that as well.
I think it was intriguing to see the way they presented it, because I think they've had, you've had My Analytics that does a lot of the measurement about how we as individuals interact, and that My Analytics tooling is presenting that information to us as individuals. But the underpinning of that is workplace analytics. It's much bigger data, and they're really starting to turn that into useful information, so that they can actually, turn it to a positive use. So the workplace analytics, you'll be able to identify people who maybe aren't as productive as they used to be, identify areas of the organisation where you can increase productivity or help people, and so they're going to be using a lot of that, and that's been on the roadmap for quite a while and been in beta versions for a long time. But now they've kind of been talking about this virtual commutes, the ability to use Cortana to book time out to get your own headspace, and then they brought in Headspace as well to be able to actually start to bring in meditation. And I think it's very telling how they're adapting the technology to support non-technical needs for us, to say, actually, we know that, as I think we were talking about before we started, back-to-back meetings, it seems to be the norm now. Everybody's getting Teams and Zoom fatigue. So it's important to actually break that up and to identify where people are overworking, working too much longer because they're not getting out, they're not taking breaks. So I think this is a really powerful tool to turn to that purpose.
And a good message. Yeah. Sorry, Karen.
I think that they've actually added they've added new categories into the productivity score as well. And I think that these are the kind of things that are going to be added in there as well. And
sorry, for those who don't know what the productivity score is.
So the productivity score is kind of like an admin level report where you can see how your organization's using certain technologies. So are you sending lots of email? Are you setting up meetings with little notice? Those kind of things. And it just gives you a bit of a measure of how your Office 365 service, Microsoft 365 services are being used. Sorry, caught myself there. But yeah, no, it's good. It's a good idea to say, well, okay, we think we know people are using it well, but actually, are they? So have we done our adoption, and told people don't attach items in their email? Are they using OneDrive and sharing links and things like that? It's a good measure.
And I thought what I really liked from the Teams analytics was that there's a new visual that'll be coming that shows the connections. So it will show where you're connecting with other people. I'm a big fan of Collab Talk that Christian Buckley runs as a tweet jam. So he asks a load of questions, everyone replies on there, and afterwards, John White, and I've suddenly forgot the name of his company.
Tygraph.
Tygraph, thank you, Al, puts a great Power BI report and shows how people are connected, so you can see the conversations that take place. And I think it's a really important way to see how teams are working with each other. Where are teams working in isolation? Where are they opening up and talking to a lot of people? Who is it that's engaging? Who's those points that are bringing people in the organization and helping getting the message around? And who are those who are working off in their own route? Not saying that's always a bad thing and always a good thing, but to get that visibility on where that is taking place, and if there are silos, to look at those and whether they're the right thing or not. Yeah, because obviously if you've got a large multinational bank and you've got a strategy team within there that can't be sharing information, or you've got a compliance team that has the Chinese walls and needs to be kept from different areas, then you want to be able to see that. If you don't, you want to be able to see people collaborating effectively and doing things. And I thought it was a great way to visualize on a lot of that as well. So yeah, I think some interesting things. And I think going back to the time between meetings, when we were in large offices and things like that, going between meeting rooms, yes, you had to go between meeting rooms. At least it gave you a couple of minutes going through, maybe to grab a glass of water. Now it's literally click, click, onto the next one, click, click, onto the next one.
Not unless you set Outlook to say knock 5 minutes off the end of every meeting.
And you know what you do?
Was opening that one up to you there, Al.
Yeah, I found though what I was doing today, I was doing that, and I had my 5 minutes. So what did I do? I went, "Oh, I've got 5 minutes. I'll just do this." Then looked up and went, "Oh no, I'm late for my next meeting." Yeah. So it's a great idea, but yeah.
A habit to get into is to get up and walk around. 5 minutes isn't long enough to do anything other than walk around the block, walk around the garden, and then sit down again.
I'll have to try that. Yeah. But yeah.
So I thought some great stuff with teams. I think the other one that kind of related to teams is the other, maybe more traditional area of intranets and digital workspace, workplace, should I say, not workspace. I thought with the teams, the links towards the new home app. So we've already seen quite a few clients wanting to pin a tab there. You can create a manual app on there and have it open up to a link. Now that's going to be similar to Power BI. It's going to be built in there. You can point it towards your intranet homepage, wherever it is. Doesn't need to be your .sharepoint.com top level site. You can define a homepage at other areas, and that can be your pinned homepage that will come from there. And then along with that, the app bar, which is people have been crying out within SharePoint and developing their own ones and extending and making really, really bad development with some of those for years. So it's good to see Microsoft make some really some really good developments to hopefully make that work. So there was a nice amount of excitement about that. It's something that people feel they should have been there for a while. But there was genuine people thinking this could be a good changer, and I think it's one of the opportunities that Microsoft have had for a very long time with SharePoint is to make the navigation richer and more engaging. It's something that, for as long as I've been in SharePoint, it's the first thing. Absolutely. Right, we're going to make the navigation work. Can we have a mega menu?
You got one. You get two.
Yeah. And just in case, sorry, Gary, I know you've put your hands up, but just in case people haven't seen it, this is a global navigation, so this can be applied across all your sites. I have to be honest, I haven't drilled into it. I'm assuming you can control if you want it across all your sites. I think you can apply it to hubs, so you can have that one across a set of hubs. We'll certainly be looking at the detail, but this isn't just about on your landing page having that, it's across more than that. Sorry, Gary, you're going to add as well.
It's to bring that unification together, isn't it? It's the we've been able to just create a very simple Teams app, present something as a tab. This is different. This is proper integration. This is being able to get the best out of SharePoint and your communication sites through that Teams interface. So again, it's the conversion of the worlds, isn't it? It's like what you're saying now earlier on about Teams is the desktop that you're going to go to. I mean, all it's missing now is a proper Outlook app, really. And
blasphemy. Yeah, we didn't
hear about that, because that is meant to be coming, isn't it? But there was no more information on it.
I mean, to be fair, the Outlook PWA, the web version, is brilliant as a standalone. so I'm not too worried about it. I use it and I think it's great. But it is one of those things that it's just sat there on the outside at the moment.
I think, you know what? I think bringing email is a controversial thing to have to do. I think what I would prefer to see would be at least to see the calendar from the Outlook PWA come into Teams, so you get a better calendar experience.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
That would be higher on my priority rather than getting email into Teams. But that's a personal thing.
We'll probably touch a bit more on Microsoft Search later, but one of the announcements there was around having your conversations via Microsoft Search, and that means your emails, but also your Yammer messages. Sorry, not your, but Yammer messages and Teams messages as well. So we'll come on to Search a bit more, but I think that notion of alternative ways to getting to the same information is absolutely there.
I think that if you bring in the Fluid UI into that as well, and say actually, if you can search all of your communications and respond in context, that's an intriguing prospect as well. Rather than having just your chat for Teams, having chat for anything with a Fluid UI that you can actually respond to, like Yammer.
So the Fluid framework, and I'm just making notes to put that into the put in the links, is a development. It's a way for doing dev within Microsoft 365 that allows you to do have two people working on the same bit of data at the same time. I think as a very base summary. So examples we already see within Word that we can co-author within Word, although that's not using the Fluid framework. And there's no, I was listening to the Microsoft 365 dev podcast. There is no confirmed plans for it to use that, but it makes sense. But it's that kind of thing where you can work on there at the same time, see things live, update. And I think that what I thought was interesting from that podcast is that's going to support inking as well. So it's not just text. You could bring in the ink support. So it's not just about those live sockets. It is also about being able to manage that data, work offline. So if you lose that connection, does it cache things, handling a lot of the things that, yes, sockets gives you the capability of doing that, but there's a lot more you need to think about that to be a working bit of development. And I think the Fluid framework, Microsoft will be building that and bringing some really interesting things out, I'm sure, but B, third parties can do that as well. Developers can do it in their own organization for a specific one, and I'm sure we'll see some great things coming on AppSource as well with that.
I think on the search part, just better searching Teams in general is just a good thing because it's terrible. So to see that's actually going to be worked on and it's going to be more integrated is just better news all around.
Microsoft Search will be the Teams, powering the Teams, and I think a lot of should we come to Search now? One more thing before we cover Search, because I think something, Gary, you mentioned before that I haven't really taken on board. There was lots of great announcements, and we'll put some links there about SharePoint news and being able to send news all over the place. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was the SharePoint templates. Now, I know they talked about Teams templates and that ability to create a team and have a set of tabs and pieces on there. But you saw something around SharePoint templates too.
Yeah, so this is, I guess we've been wanting templates for a while in modern SharePoint, and they never really appeared. We got site designs and site scripts that didn't really seem to go anywhere, but now it's been given a bit of a jolt, a bit of a bolt, and so now we've got templates come in that like Teams templates, but for your SharePoint sites, where you can have predefined kind of like organizational level templates, and it can just go off and build the sites for you. So it's same as the way site designs work at the moment. You get a basic site and then it just applies the design on top. This is more of a user friendly, in your face approach, really.
Is it going to be similar to the Lookbook in terms of what it can actually provision? And
no. So I don't think it's going to be that. Well, you got to think Lookbook is being powered by PNP at the moment, so I don't think that's the case. But yeah.
So Gary, what you're saying is that there's an amazing templating tool that's already available, and Microsoft's creating another one. Is that what you said there, or was that my words? Maybe.
No, it appears to just be, well, it's there out the box, so that's what's coming. So,
I think it'll be integrated. It will be really nice to see that capability. I think with the PMP ones, you've got a lot more capability, but you need to do a lot more work to get the most out of that. So I think there is, despite me taking the piss a little bit there is room for both of those, and there are different situations where the different ones work.
Yeah, the distinction is one's a provisioning engine, the other one is just applying some templates over the top of like a design. The lookbook basically builds everything for you. You put in the URLs that you want, and it goes off and does that. So it is different. Yeah.
And just mentioning lookbook, one thing and related to templates was interesting is that Microsoft Lists has obviously been announced a while back. There wasn't really any updates I saw particularly on that, but there is a community effort to have a Microsoft Lists lookbook. So trying to create their own templates and give some examples of, because I think a lot of people see lists and go, that's just SharePoint lists, it's just the same old thing. But with the column formatting, there's a lot more. There are the example templates that you've got within there already, and I think they're trying to gather more momentum on one side there. So I'll put that into the show notes. But if people are asking you what can you do with Microsoft List, there's some great examples on there, which is useful. Yeah. I think the other thing on the kind of SharePoint and productivity space was Stream. And I certainly tweeted beforehand, there was certainly rumours. I think Dan Home dropped a heavy hint that we'd be able to share Stream videos externally. I thought, that's really good. But actually, it was a much bigger announcement in some ways, that they're re-platforming Stream. Now, I don't think we know yet exactly what that's going to look like. I don't think we're going to lose that Stream app, but it looked, from what I read and could see from there, you'll be able to embed those videos a bit like a content type, the way you have documents that are in SharePoint, in OneDrive, in Teams. That video will just be one of those within there. That you'll still, in the same way you have OneDrive and files, you stop putting your hands up. God, I can't teach with you your hands up all over the place. You'll still have your OneDrive in where you have your files you can go to and you find your files. You'll still have a Stream portal where you can go and find your videos, but it will be much simpler to embed those and see them as part of there. Alan, you had your hand up first. Do you want to speak? Put in my cub leader voice.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting because I've been working a lot with the client around Stream and around using video, as a primary way of working. Now everybody's working remotely, and it's been a bugbear of theirs in terms of what capabilities that you've had with Stream to share, to manage videos, compliance, all the security and compliance, retention, all of that kind of stuff. And the
compliance and security doesn't kick in with Stream at the moment. Then
there is none.
There isn't. That's interesting.
No, there's nothing. And I think, and this is one of the things, is that they wanted to keep things for a period of time and then be able to say, well, actually, we got to the end of a retention period. All of that good stuff that you get with content. So this works really well for them in that respect. But on the other hand, they really like the way that you can take a Stream channel, embed it into a Teams tab within a channel, and actually publish content to channels. And I think what hasn't been clear for me is what that relationship is, between publishing a video within a OneDrive or SharePoint location, publishing it to everyone, and then associating it with a channel so that you can still have those organization-wide channels to publish videos.
Connecting a bit of content that has some, say, metadata around it, so lots of people can search it, and maybe having it auto-tagged with that. Maybe, if only there'd been an announcement that could talk about some of those.
That might be one of the things that they might need. But I think it's interesting that if you're just thinking about Stream on its own, it didn't really give me the answers to that, to be able to go back to my client and say, actually, this is what you should be thinking about, because keeping everything in Teams, that will work really nicely for them. I mean, that will give them a lot of advantages. But it's that organization-wide level that's one level above the permissions that you would grant in Teams that will be an interesting challenge to see how that actually plays out, and how you govern where location lives, where content lives, what location you're storing it in.
So I think this is one of the bigger announcements for me, just because of the possibilities that it opens up for Stream. So Stream for me has just been standalone. Videos go there magically. You can do things, but there's no connections whatsoever. There's never an API. There was never any roadmap for that either. By moving to OneDrive, SharePoint as storage, we already have APIs to handle that. It's the graph. It just becomes another object within there that we can deal with. The other thing it opens up as well, there should be no problem with guest sharing, where we had that problem before.
Yeah, and they've definitely confirmed that.
Yeah, they've definitely confirmed that. So
no more downloading, then uploading to your OneDrive and sharing.
Yeah, and that's been very much a big issue that people have raised. So by just simply moving where the content lives, that solves a hell of a lot of problems with a functionality that's already there and available to us. I guess the other side of this is whilst there's a hell of a lot of content in the cloud, storage in the cloud, you obviously have enough storage for your tenant, right? Video is going to eat into that. If you're having, recordings of hour-long meetings every day and everyone's using it, then it'll be interesting to see how this SharePoint storage will handle that, because it's not just a few extra files. This is, we're talking hundreds of megs for a recording. So
I'd say 3 people with grey hair, a hat and a beard waffling on that's sitting in some show notes at the moment. Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's also how you manage the CDN and the streaming of those videos down from SharePoint and OneDrive and manage that to say, actually, it's a different content type. We're going to route this content through a different distribution network.
But they have said that it will still have things like the transcription, all the functionality that Stream has. They're not taking anything away from that. So I presume, again, the CDNs and places like that will remain in place.
Which is intriguing to know what they're doing under the hood to get all of that still there.
Absolutely.
It's not completely all there, though. So just before we actually started recording, I saw an article. You can opt into this. So you can go in with PowerShell and you can turn this on your tenant to direct
right now.
Yeah. So you can do that right now. There are a few things that you don't get.
Look at Al starting to type straight away.
You do get transcripts, but English only. So you don't get.
So not even Northern.
No, not even Northern. It's terrible. But there are. It's not. Complete parity. It's not like they've kept everything. So, but it's good that they've been able to kind of release this so early as well. Which is good, because I think we've said about this a few times. We get the announcements and then we wait months for them to happen. Still waiting for tasks, say, Al. And there's few things that it's just there. So
a couple of it's there. Apologies for my casual English racism about Northern. It's because and Ian Smith, who's been on the show before and is another CPS, we have many conversations about the ability of Stream to transcribe Northern accent on there. Was my comment for that one. So we're hoping that maybe that will improve as well. On there. The other one, you talked about things on the roadmap, and Gary, you sent me a link just before this that I'll put in the show notes, that and I think Dan Home just tweeted this just before the show, where they've pulled together a lot of the roadmap slides from Ignite into one presentation, which I think is fantastic, because I know so many people, certainly with the in-person conferences, will be clicking away at those roadmap ones, and they're often one of the most shared that will come out on Twitter. To have all of those in one place is fantastic. So do check those out in the show notes. I'm going to try and rock it on a bit, because my son does need picking up, and it's raining, and it'd be really grumpy if it picks on there. I think two big things came out. One, we could probably talk about this for ages, but we don't know about it. And it was Jeff Teeper's "And One More Thing," which was Project Nucleus. So Project Nucleus was really, he talked about it as the ability to have your Microsoft list content offline. It was a whole new data model for it. To me, it was much more than that. The offline will be nice. Didn't really talk about how that will work with pages and other elements and files and things within there. This was really just about lists. But to me, what that led more to was better performance. So filtering, grouping, because you've got the data there, you're not going back and forth to the server. That's going to be there on your machine, hopefully in an efficient way, will make that a lot better experience from there. And whether the question that came up straight away was, oh, does this get rid of 5,000 limit? No one answered that. But to me, it kind of edges towards a lot more ability to work around that in a more effective way. So I definitely need to hear more about this before we sort of get very excited. But to change something so fundamental to the way SharePoint has worked for so long, I thought was really good to hear an early view of that.
So on this one, I got quite excited about this because I've literally just finished a migration of 260,000 Lotus Notes records into a single SharePoint online list. Okay, that is a lot of items, but then you look at it and you go, SharePoint lists can hold up to 30 million. So that is a fraction of what it can actually handle. Now I'd look at that and go, that is a big list. You had your head in your hands there, Kevin, about 260,000 items. That's a lot. Yeah. I've actually been really surprised the performance of the list, doing filtering on all those items. It doesn't even break a sweat. So
someone's going to create a view saying show without folders.
But you've got lazy loading. That's the thing. You've got lazy loading. It's not loading everything. The filters actually work very well as well for searching for certain records that way. So I'm really intrigued now as to how this has come about, and that there's some lists out there, some customers that are hitting limits that are into the millions. But yeah, to have that sinking down and then having that local cache, yeah. I guess I was intrigued anyway, but now I'm like, wow.
1.9 million documents in a document library. I can vouch that does work in 2010. Is very hard to do anything with. I can absolutely promise you that one. As Al well knows, we've had fun conversations on that. Hello, if you were listening. So yeah, I think Nucleus will be really interesting. One to keep an eye on. A bit like SharePoint Spaces, it may go very quiet and just be something that actually behind the scenes does more and isn't a big thing. But I think I said when we talked about pre-Ignite, I like those big announcements you don't expect, and that definitely ticked a box for me on there.
Which Spaces is GA now. That was announced.
It is, yeah. That's true. So it is still there. That was a massive announcement. I don't know when that actually got announced. Somewhere in probably one of the smaller talks on that.
Yeah.
But I think a much bigger one, and I liked this announcement. I've been very excited about Project Cortex. I've talked about my knowledge management series on the blog on there. Really, I love AI. I love being able to categorize data. I hate having to fill out forms. So the idea that things can do that in an intelligent way for you absolutely ticked all my boxes on there. And we now have a product. Actually, 1st of October should be hitting today, thinking about it. That's another deadline I guess missed from Microsoft. Quick look on Twitter to make sure nothing's there, but no, haven't seen anything on that one. Oh dear. But for those who haven't heard, Project Cortex was the kind of pre-release name. They have now released part of Cortex, which is about the auto tagging, being able to look at the contents of documents, being able to look at images, applying AI to look at the contents of that and auto tagging the content there, being able to go into regular documents. So we work a lot with statements of work, and we have to rely on the sales team. Hello, if any of you are listening, sorry, I'm going to be rude about you. Relying on them capturing the data from that, pulling out the information, and it doesn't always happen. Now with Cortex, you can use something called machine teaching, which isn't machine learning, where you throw thousands and thousands and millions of records and it learns automatically. This is about taking at least 5 and then kind of pointing towards where things are, and then having it learn, saying, okay, we're looking for pattern in this sort of area. Let's be able to pull that information out and auto tag as you upload your statement of work, as you upload your contracts. If you have a common look and feel for those, it can pull the information out automatically. And I think this will be very interesting on there. People have been very interested around what the cost is going to be of this. They've now confirmed that it's going to be available for E3 or E5 licenses as an add-on. So you won't get anything by default. It will be an add-on. How much? I was hoping we might find out today, but apparently not quite there yet. So it would be interesting if we're recording this on the 1st of October. I think we'll put it out the weekend. So if there is information, I'll definitely put that in the show notes. That will be the interesting part of it. I would also say there was a bit of disappointment because there's a lot more coming with Cortex. There was talk about the sort of knowledge hubs and the ability to have experts curating some of this. None of that's there yet. They have said that the rest of Cortex will get announced by the end of the year. I think they said this year. They certainly said the year. But I thought it was good. I enjoyed seeing what was there. I'm looking forward to trying to get my hands on it and bankrupting everyone playing around with it. But I think there should be a lot of use can come from this, definitely.
Yeah, I was a bit kind of, when I first heard of it, I was a bit like, it's a half announcement. It's just the collection side, and I was a bit like, I want to see the screenshots that we saw about metadata on pages, and you can get your keywords and that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's the bit that I wanted to see, what the output was going to be. So yeah, it was nice for them to announce it, which was great, but I was a little bit disappointed at the same time. But interestingly, I've also been looking at maybe looking at the technologies that they might be using to actually drive this as well, because a lot of it is, you've got the
Azure stuff already.
Yeah. So, Power Platform is really kind of abstractions of the Azure services. So I started having a look at the form recognizer in Azure, Cognitive Services. Very, very similar to what Cortex is offering. So it's interesting that it's
using that under the hood. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's being packaged together, but there's no reason why you can't, if you are really looking for that kind of functionality of, we have all these documents and we need to scan them, and machine learning, the functionality is there to take a hold of. It's just not joined
that's
together.
Where my blog series is going, exactly on that, of saying you can either take Cortex and pay for things done for you, or if you have developers, you'll be able to use a lot of the tools there.
Sorry, I think it is building on the existing services. All of the services in Azure, they've pulled them all together, made AI Builder fantastic, makes it easy. All they're doing is wrapping those services that devs have had access to for years and saying, this is an easy UI for you to use. And I think what Cortex does is it takes it a step further and goes, actually, we're going to apply that now. So rather than just saying, here's a service, it does this, you work out how to apply it in your scenario. They're saying, we've got a scenario, we're applying it. That's it. Everything is there.
I think what Cortex will do is Syntex, which is the service which is available, uses those tools. What the rest of Cortex will do is make that information easy to consume. And I think that's what people are particularly looking forward to seeing, the rest of Cortex that builds into this. Look in time, my son's going to start getting wet. I think related to Syntex, Microsoft Search as well. There was some great announcement like that. And that is very closely related with Syntex. What I loved and I see as available now is the fact you can get your custom apps. You can index those. Now it's a development process. It's using the graph. I've got a blog post hopefully which will come out before we publish this show that shows a way to do that using Logic Apps. It's not complex dev. It's very easy on there, especially if you're using things like Logic Apps where you can get your triggers. You're not having to write scheduled jobs to go through there. You can get that live from your triggers on there. One thing I know, I can't remember, it was Gary Al or both of you was talking about was, great, we can consume Azure DevOps. That's actually one of the out-the-box connectors that's already available. So you can consume enterprise websites, media wikis, you can consume Azure DevOps, SQL,
ServiceNow,
are all there.
Is one of
ServiceNow,
yes,
is the other big one. That is now in your tenants if you're on targeted release, and you can start to pull that data up to 2 million records, just to be very clear on there for those who've got Gary's big lists for consuming some of the things from Lotus Notes. But you can start to pull that in, and it's a really nice service to be able to render how you appear that. It's similar to adaptive cards, interestingly not exactly adaptive cards, which is slightly disappointing, but I think very related if you've got from that. So being able to see that, some really good stuff coming with Microsoft Search. Pulling it back to what we started with, talking about Teams, we'll start to see that Microsoft Search appearing in Teams. Again, you've got all that content there within Teams. And I think that really was one of the big themes coming out of Ignite. I think we'll put some links in there. Gary, you saw a couple of things on the more dev side. I know it's not the main dev conference.
Yeah, the one thing that was that got my attention straight away was Logic App's preview. And I love the way that they're taking this. So I love Logic Apps. So if you don't know what Logic Apps are, basically it's what Power Automate is built on top of. It's the workflow engine, but has not really been seen much love from Microsoft. A lot of that has gone to Azure Functions, to the developers. But Logic Apps is really good because it's the low code, but it's the developer kind of approach to those low code workflows. Now with V2, it's taking a new direction. So it's actually changing its runtime to use Azure Functions behind the scenes. So that's the whole guts of it changed, which enables.
But to the front end, I think they're putting a new pretty front end, but they're not really changing the way it looks.
So there's a new UI designer coming, which looks very similar to the Power Virtual Agents actually. So that's interesting to see that direction, because it's running on the Azure Function runtime. That now enables local development. So there's a VS Code extension, so you can develop locally on your own machine, run Logic Apps on your own machine, because you can use the same runtime as what you'd use for developing Azure Functions. The other thing as well, Logic Apps were only ever cloud hosted only. Now you can run them on premises, which opens up tons of possibilities.
Is that going to be supported in production then?
Yes. Not at the moment, it's in preview. But that is,
so it is available now in preview. But
that's really interesting to start those clients that need that journey to the cloud to make it easier to upskill. That's really interesting.
I'd seen that as a development.
I'm glad I listened to this podcast. I've learned.
You learn something, don't you?
So we can have Power Automate on-prem effectively.
Well, this is the interesting thing, you see, because if Logic Apps is changing, what does that mean for Power Automate that is V1 essentially? Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in is in V1, if there was an action in Logic Apps to write JavaScript in an action. But to enable that, you had to have something called an integration environment running, and that was expensive. Very expensive. Now, because that's running on top of Logic Apps now, which can run code, does that mean that action
running on functions
on Azure Functions,
on the runtime? Does that mean now that action doesn't have that dependency on the integration environment, and that you can actually put JavaScript into that Logic App, which then again for me is almost, you can actually do things just in the Logic App that you don't need a function for, but you get all that no code approach, because there's always this trade-off. Logic Apps are great and you get the actions and it can be no code, but when you're doing complex things, you may want to shift that out to an Azure function and write the code for that bit. Maybe you want to reduce the amount of loops and things that you want in there, or to transform some data. Because you've got the ability to put a line of code in there, you could actually do that within the Logic App. It might be, transforming some JSON, for example, adding extra properties, something simple that was complex.
Really interesting.
I'm really interested to see if that's going to be available, and then what that means for Power Automate and that going forward. Does that mean we're going to see changes? Might be, it might not.
I think the ability to deploy all that easily will be amazing. So
I was going to say, I think
great.
I think there's always been a separation with the Logic Apps and Power Automate, where Power Automate is self-serve, personal, and if they can really put that separation in to go, it is personal, it is community, it's not an application in a line of business, and you can actually just lift and shift your because you've been able to export a Power Automate flow into a Logic app, but it takes that additional understanding of Azure to be able to actually manage it, and it means IT are managing it. If they can make that separation really clear and easy to implement, then I think that gives us a lot of potential to automate a lot more stuff using that same platform.
The other thing as well for this announcement is because that it's Logic Apps is moving to the Azure Functions runtime. One of the other big announcements that I saw was Azure Functions now have the ability to have connectors.
Yeah, Yeah, it'll be interesting.
And I was are they starting to merge? Are we going to see one kind of integration service that is both code and low code? Have a bit of a hybrid. I don't know how those connectors are going to work. I'm assuming it's going to be similar to the bindings that we get at the moment.
So the Logic Apps preview is available now to look at. I don't think the connectors is yet, because I had a look because I want to use the Twitter one for my post. But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to wrap up pretty soon. So I think it's interesting. We talked about how important Teams was across Ignite, and then I've finished on something that was nothing to do with Teams. So something for everyone there.
And we haven't even covered any security and compliance. Oh well, for next time, eh?
Haven't maybe we can get Peter back at some point and talk about the latest lots there. We haven't talked about Azure Communication Service, very interesting one of running your own telephony and pieces there and how that links with Dynamics. So much out there. So do look at the book of work. Let us know if there's any particular ones you'd like us to. Keep doing that. Book of news on there as well. I'm going to very quickly say I'm going to put some links in our show notes. I've got in our little OneNote here events and ego posting, so all the great stuff that we're doing that we get to show off. I know we've got GlobalCon 4 coming up. There's the Global Microsoft 365 Dev Bootcamp. I think, Gary, you were doing something on serverless. Was it the serverless days just come out? There's Teams Fest just around the corner. In fact, 7 days away. No pressure out on that one. It's AOS Southeast Asia coming up. So what Collab Days Lisbon, Collab Days Barcelona, lots of things. It's definitely getting into conference season, which is why we're all looking a bit tired and glad to chat a bit about Ignite and get excited about something before we get back to the gloom of writing presentations and try and look excited in recordings outside of that. Any last very quick word either of you wanted to add why my sun gets wetter and colder outside?
Based on that, no.
So congratulations to Peter, who today became an MVP.
Thank you. Yes, massive congratulations. I know Peter does listen, so huge congratulations. Another person I thought was an MVP already, so great that you finally got those letters off the name. So and congratulations. I haven't seen a massive number of the people who've gotten there. I'm going to have a look a bit later, but anyone else who's got their MVP, congratulations. Definitely a great thing on there. We will put the show notes. Apologies, this has just only been one slightly longer episode. We'll go back to normal routine in a couple of weeks' time. If you do want to appear on the show, do let us know. We'd love to sort of promote people and get people. We've had a few who've either just become MVPs when we had them booked in or have become MVPs after the show. You know, maybe that's not coincidence. Otherwise, thank you very much. It probably is, but otherwise, thank you very much. I've been Gray.
I've been Hat.
I've been Beard.
Speak to you all in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.